Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to break down a pretty complex argument, how a fragile ceasefire in the Middle East could have a direct and really costly impact on Australia's fuel security and ultimately on your wallet.
Okay, so here's the plan. We're going to start with the situation overseas. Then we'll see how that could send some major economic shockwaves. After that, we'll look at a proposed military solution. And then we'll bring it all right back home to connect the dots and see how this whole international drama is being linked directly to policy decisions made right here in Australia. So, our source material kicks things off with what it calls a precarious ceasefire in the Middle East. But the real focus here, the thing you gotta pay attention to, is this one tiny but incredibly vital global choke point, the Straits of Hormuz.
And yeah, this slide really gets to the heart of it. You see, the whole argument we're digging into today, it's all built on this one idea, that there's a direct line from a conflict thousands of miles away, all the way to the price you pay at the pump in Australia.
So check this out. This slide lays out a really stark contrast that is, absolutely central to the argument being made here. On one side, you have the United States, described as fuel self-sufficient. But on the other side, there's Australia, which is not. And that difference is critical, because the source argues it leaves Australia dangerously exposed if things go sideways with the global fuel supply.
Okay, so we've established this vulnerability, right? Now let's look at the specific economic threat that the source material claims could actually come from it.
And here's where it gets really specific and, frankly, pretty alarming. The source warns of a peace deal scenario that could leave Iran with the power to slap get this, a $2 million toll on every single ship that passes through the Straits of Hormuz.
And yeah, the source really isn't pulling any punches here. They don't just call it a problem. They call it a catastrophe. And the result of that catastrophe? Well, they predict absolutely extortionate prices for fuel for everyday Australians.
Right, and the point being made here is that we're not just talking about some abstract number on a spreadsheet. As you can see, the source claims this toll would hit the folks who are literally the engines of the Australian economy. We're talking miners, farmers, and truckers.
And then, wow, the source takes it up a notch. They're not just calling this an economic fee anymore. No, they label it, and this is a direct quote, a subsidy for terrorism.
So, if that's the threat, what's the proposed solution? Well, the source material lays out let's just say, a very clear and very decisive course of action.
So, according to the source, there's really only one way to guarantee free passage through this choke point, and that's through military force. The goal, they state, is, well, it's unambiguous, for the Iranian war machine to be utterly destroyed.
And this call for action? It leads right to a call for Australia to get involved. The argument is that the government should be on the phone with the White House asking, what can Australia do to help? And this is all based on the idea that America deserves our help to keep those shipping lanes open.
And this is where the narrative takes a really sharp turn. The whole argument pivots from what's happening overseas to what's happening at home. The claim is that Australia's ability to even help itself, let alone anyone else, is being crippled from the inside.
So what's the problem according to the source? Well, they point the finger at what they call a fossil fuel phobia inside the current Australian government. And they basically position this so-called phobia as the #1 thing standing in the way of energy security.
Okay, and this slide really captures the core contradiction that the source is trying to highlight. On one hand, you've got this reliance on foreign fuel, the claim being that Australia is perfectly happy to use fossil fuels that come from Singapore. But then on the other hand, you see domestic production all tangled up, reflecting the argument that the government is not prepared to get fossil fuels out of the ground in Australia.
Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty here. What is the actual policy that the source is pointing to as the root of this entire national security problem?
Well, the whole argument really zeroes in on this one specific political deal, a deal with the Greens that, it's claimed, has basically tied the environment minister's hands when it comes to approving any new liquid fuel projects.
So the story goes that this political deal really neutered a key legal tool, this national interest test. It used to give the minister the power to say, hey, this project is vital for our national security, for defense, for fuel supply, so we're going to fast-track it and basically cut through what the source calls all this green tape.
So the argument for getting rid of this change, it's laid out pretty clearly here in 3 steps. Step 1. This really important national interest test was a thing. Step 2, a political deal comes along and now, allegedly, you can't use it for liquid fuel security anymore. So step 3, the conclusion, that deal has to go. It needs to be repealed to get that power back.
And this all leads to the source material's final and pretty stark assessment that this whole situation is proof that the current government is, and I quote, utterly incapable of rising to the challenges we face.
And really, that leaves us with the big question at the heart of this whole argument. When you're talking about something as absolutely vital as fuel, where exactly do you draw the line between national security, energy independence, and, domestic environmental policy? It's a tough one.